Welcome to Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang, your intel on the Philippine markets and the economy. In the headlines, the Anti-Money Laundering Council is conducting inquiries with financial institutions on transactions linked to the anomalous flood control projects. AMLAC Chairman Eli Remolona told One News exclusively.
We're making a lot of inquiries. We're finding out all the big. We're trying to identify the big flows of cash throughout the financial systems, the unusually large flows of cash, but not just cash. Any financial transaction that looks unusual, we're trying to analyze.
A sharper slowdown in economic activity and rise in unemployment likely to prompt aggressive rate-cutting action from the Bangko Sentral. We hear from Remolona himself on his monetary policy outlook in the second of our three-part series. And a flight to safety in play as investors size up the scale of corruption. Local stocks, the peso, and 10-year bond yields are down year to date. We get some insights from Stephen Yang, former chairman and CEO of Evercore Asia and independent director of Maharlika Investment Corporation. The Anti-Money Laundering Council is currently conducting inquiries with financial institutions and transactions linked to anomalous flood control projects. In an exclusive interview on One News, AMLAC Chair and Bangko Sentral Governor Eli Remolona said they're searching for huge sums of money. As it's been done in cash, might there be maybe an inquiry into how the financial system or maybe even banks had maybe had something to do about how the cash was sourced?
Making a lot of inquiries. We're finding out all the big. We're trying to identify the big flows of cash throughout the financial systems, the unusually large flows of cash.
And what have you found so far? Is it coming more from the government financial institutions, more private, or a combination of both?
I think more from the government financial institutions. And that makes sense because it's government money, so it would go through government financial institutions. So that's what you've seen so far.
At the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee hearing last Thursday, Senator Kiko Pangilinan grilled AMLAC, questioning the strength of the law in which it was created.
Assuming meron kayong basis to act, what do you do? 500 million, 2 days from a contractor, withdrew cash, galing sa DPWH, anong gagawin nyo? Wala.
Ito po, usually, pag trigger for investigation po, we are able to conduct a backtracking of the transactions, Your Honor.
Yes, and then what?
If it is related to an investigation of an unlawful activity, Your Honor, we make use of it as part of our case build-up.
But you can't freeze it there and then?
Hindi po, Mr. Chair.
Chair, isang interjection lang, Chair, kung isa lang.
So yes. kulang ang batas. You're saying kulang ang ngipin ng anti-money laundering law in this regard?
With us now for more is Stephen Yang, former chairman and CEO of Evercore Asia and independent director of various listed companies and Maharlika Investment Corporation. Good to see you again, Stevie. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for inviting me. My first time on this show.
I know. Thank you so much. A very critical time. How are you weighing in on this? The governor says AMLAC is now trying to identify the big flows of cash into the financial system. But Senator Kiko there is saying that AMLAC should be more proactive, freeze once there's a cloud of suspicion. Does AMLAC need more teeth to be more proactive?
Well, I don't want to get into the specific details given these are being threshed through right now. I think AMLA has the power it needs. Basically, it is a very powerful weapon. And I'm happy it's being used with some circumspection rather than just across the board. Now, if they want to temporarily freeze and then immediately investigate and defreeze it, but let's assume I think on the one hand, you really have to freeze if it's extremely anomalous and prima facie bad. But for everybody else, you're causing disruption to a lot of people if you just unilaterally and whimsically freeze. Now, the real problem, I think, which we've seen in previous investigations, it's the breadth of the anti-disclosure, the secrecy law in banking systems. You really don't have something that restrictive in other countries. I think I would go down that path rather than the bank secrecy of accounts and deposits law, rather than AMLA, which I think their powers are in line with most in the region.
Yeah, but when you talk about something as big as a government financial institution, the biggest, Land Bank is involved. It's been summoned in the ongoing Senate Blue Ribbon Committee hearings. What impact could that have, the biggest government-owned bank, have on the whole financial ecosystem?
Well, okay, let's divide it into three. Deposits, which are the liabilities, assets, which are the loans, and then the capital base, okay? Because basically, rather than say it's good, it's bad, it's this, it's that, let's try to be a little more specific and analytical. On the liability side, deposits, if the deposits are frozen, they stay with Land Bank, right? So there's not going to be a lot of harm. If people are speculating, as you said, where there will be a bank run, I don't think Land Bank is very susceptible, or even DBP, to a bank run, because it is not a big retail bank. It is not a big private sector depositor bank. Most of their deposits and clients are, frankly, the bulk are related to the national government, LGUs, and government agencies. So they're not going to be prone to a bank run. So I would think I'm relatively sanguine on the liability side, the deposits. On the asset side, basically, I don't know how are these contractors mostly just depositors and bank clients, or have they been extended extensive credit? And if they have been given extensive credit, are they collateralized? Are they corporate guarantees? Are they project financing? Now, I don't think there'll be mortgages because they're not homes and buildings. They're basically, a lot of them would be these civil works projects. So the question is, how strong is the collateral if there have been a lot of loans, or does it exist? Now, the third would be capital adequacy. Land Bank is above its minimum threshold for capital adequacy, but not by a very huge margin. DBP is actually below, which is why they've gotten relief. Now, if they have to be write-offs, we have an issue. Now, it's not going to lead to a bank run or destabilization of either banks, but it will mean the government will have to give more capital to them to make them meet international BIS standards.
Well, given the uncertainty we have as of today, what are your foreign and local clients and contacts saying about the situation here, with the independent investigation underway and more uncovered by the day with the Senate hearings? And what do you tell them back?
Okay, for the minuscule number of portfolio investors who invest in the Philippines, it's not good. I mean, what do people want? They either want improvement or stability, not uncertainty. Nobody's asking perfection, all right? We live in the real world, and there's a reason why we're called one of the emerging markets rather than a mature market. So, but the answer is the vote is already in. If you look at a one-year performance, the Hang Seng is up 26.6% as of last Friday. Shanghai is up 24%. Korea is up 27.8%. India is down 6% because of all the tariff shocks that have come recently. Taiwan is up 15%, primarily on tech, okay, with TSMC and all that. Kuala Lumpur is down a bit, 3%. Singapore, because of the government's own priming of the stock market and proactive steps, is up 19.3%. Indonesia is up 5.2%. Vietnam, on the back of its robust manufacturing, is up 17%. Now, who are the two laggards? Thailand, guess what? There's obviously some political uncertainty there, down 9.8%. And sad to say, we are down 18.9. I mean, that's the price of uncertainty. A lot of times, I wish to stress this more. We really need a lot of critical thinking. A lot of people, like some columnists, will say, this causes that. No, this is like a pebble in a pond which goes in many directions and interconnects, and then you hit another pebble drops, and then they're all interacting with each other. These things
Exactly.
have
So what impact then? You're saying that perception has turned into a wait and see and maybe even losses, double-digit losses compared with the ASEAN. What impact then, Stevie, would it have on our economic growth forecasts?
I mean, I would be a hypocrite if I didn't say it crosses greater uncertainty, a wider range, and risk. Because, first of all, no fault of this administration. This is a 30-year nightmare in the making. I've said this many times, we have hardly any manufacturing in this country apart from food processing. Okay? There's really nothing. You take out food processing, we're hardly anything. We don't make white goods. We don't really, besides assembly, we don't manufacture parts for cars. We don't make oil rigs. We don't process our mineral products. All right? If you look at other countries, manufacturing is a very sticky investment. You can't just go in and out of manufacturing, because once you put in the capital base for a plant, once there's output and orders, that takes a long time to unwind or improve. But if you're primarily services, BPO, and remittance, it's very easy to move in and out and frankly ignore the market, which we have done because we're a 3 or 4-legged stool that lacks a leg, which is manufacturing. So what happens? You have services, remittances, and government spending. Now, if government spending is going to be temporarily slowed down because of these completely legitimate investigations, and people are wondering what the not the new rules, but the new implementation will be, then there will naturally be a hiatus in spending. And with a hiatus in spending from a big sector comes a slowdown.
So how is it looking now with our sovereign wealth fund, considering you're an independent director at the Maharlika Investment Corporation? Has it put in peril the current and intended investments in the Maharlika Investment Fund?
No, because our pipeline is for, basically, we're not in and out investors like the stock market. First of all, I'd like to greet the professional team at Maharlika, who does very painstaking preparatory work. These things are subject to great analysis even before it goes to the investment committee. And after that, before you close, there's a lot of due diligence and negotiation. So we're akin to something in between a strategic investor, an infrastructure investor, and private equity. So it's not completely permanent capital, but it's more than the 5 to 7 year patient capital of PE firms. So that takes a while. So it is less buffeted by vicissitudes of the stock market or investment climate. So
but is it a harder sell, Stephen, at the moment?
No, because we're using the money we have. Now, it might be a tougher negotiation given with comps with the other side, but it's not difficult for Maharlika to make it. In fact, people could even say, if you're taking a long-term view, this is a positive opportunity for a long-term player like Maharlika, which is very different from the stock market. Because the stock market, when the market goes down, you have basically two decisions to make. Is this a bargain or is this a value trap? You don't have that decision if you're a pseudo-strategic long-term investor like a PE or a sovereign wealth fund or a strategic.
Right.
Now, if you want, I can explain the difference between a value trap and a bargain.
But we could probably do that in the next interview. And when you come out with your columns on the solutions that you offer. Thank you so
Next
much
Friday.
for your insights. Stephen Cunillán, we'll watch out for that, the former chair and CEO of Evercore Asia and independent director of Maharlika Investment Corporation. The Agriculture Department will receive additional budget in the 2026 after the government decided to redirect funds from flood control projects. Agriculture Secretary Francisco Tiu Laurel confirmed this after a meeting with President Bongbong Marcos. Laurel said he also met with several provincial governors to determine priorities of the agency's investments. The DA received 125 billion pesos worth of budget this year. The NDRRMC had reported over a billion pesos estimated cost of damage in agriculture due to the combined effects of southwest monsoon as well as tropical cyclones Mirasol, Nando, and Opong. Meanwhile, President Marcos has ordered the extension of the country's 60-day ban on rice imports. Palace Press Officer Undersecretary Claire Castro confirmed this on Friday, but did not specify how long the extension would last. The Agriculture Department has recommended another 15 to 30 days of extension in the moratorium. The 60-day suspension started on September 1st to protect farmers during local harvest and keep prices in check. The DA, on the other hand, is also looking at increasing tariffs on imported rice. The annual rate of increase of local rice prices hit a 15-year high of 24.4% in March of last year, but has since reversed course and declined by 17% in August. You're watching Money Talks. Coming up, Bangko Sentral Governor Eli Remolona tells us when rate cuts might happen in part 2 of our exclusive interview. And Brazilian volleyball icon Leila Barros returns to Manila after 21 years, bringing a powerful call for political accountability. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back to Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. The national government's gross borrowings nearly tripled in August amid a sharp rise in domestic and foreign borrowings. Latest data from the Bureau of Treasury showed total gross of the government's borrowings to 508.53 billion pesos in August. That's a 192% jump from 174.03 billion pesos in the same month last year. Month on month, gross borrowings also surged by 206% from 166.11 billion pesos in July. Some economists said this is likely driven by the latest issuance of retail treasury bonds, as the government needed additional funds to plug the deficit in the budget. The share of these debts to our gross domestic product also edged up to 57.8% in the second quarter this year from 56.7% a year earlier. The BSP could lower borrowing costs as early as October if the economy shows signs of losing momentum. Here's the second of our three-part installment of my exclusive interview with BSP Governor Eli Remolona. But given what we do know now, that
Yes.
the money didn't go where it should, what impact do you think that might have on the forecast for GDP?
I think we were kind of surprised why our models didn't seem to work that well in terms of the forecasts. And now we kind of think we know why.
Are the models showing that the government might have to cut the forecast for growth for the full year?
We haven't done that homework yet, but I think not. I think we should have cut the forecast for the previous years. But going forward, I think the factor is not the spending. Going forward, it's going to be investor sentiment going forward.
As you face all this, the big shocker, as you make a mention of the anomalous flood control projects and the huge sums of money
Yeah.
attached to it, we're seeing that unemployment rate has risen to three-year highs,
Yeah.
and inflation is at 1.5%.
Yes.
That's the fastest since March this year.
Yes, but still low.
It is,
It's still
compared
low,
to
yeah.
the 8% that you mentioned when you
Yeah,
came into
yeah,
office.
yeah.
But what does this say now about your Goldilocks rates?
We're in the Goldilocks zone, I would say. So there's no, given, if the data, the forecasts stay as they are, we're going to stay where we are in terms of policy rate. There may be small adjustments. We may pause, we may ease, but more or less we're going to be in the same range.
So are you at the lower end or the higher
We're
end
in the
of that
middle. I would
range?
say we're in the middle,
What
we're in the-
values are you attaching to that?
between 4 and 6%.
Is there anything to suggest a slowdown in output, perhaps? Because when you look at the slowdown in the August PMI,
Yes,
that's
yes,
because
yes.
the purchases are starting to come off, the front loading of the purchases.
And that data suggests some slowdown, not a sharp slowdown in growth.
The conference, you did make a mention of output
Yes.
as a key indicator. So could that mean an interest rate easing as soon
It
as
could,
October?
it could, yes, it could.
But if indeed you are to make a move, it would be in the increment of 25 basis points and
Most
not
likely.
50 bips.
Most likely. 50 is kind of when suddenly you have a big shock to the data that says you're heading for a hard landing, then you would do 50, even more.
And what data would you be looking for then that would suggest a hard landing, considering the
So first of all,
anomalous flood
yeah,
control
first of all,
projects?
the GDP data and then the employment data is the unemployment rate going up very sharply, for example, then we have to act more decisively in terms of easing the policy rate.
So the door is open not for one and done, but a potential interest rate cut of 25 bips in October and December.
It's possible. I wouldn't say it's likely. Given our forecasts, we probably will stay where we are. But every month we get new data, and so we then decide. It's as you know, we adjust the policy rate we decide on the policy rate every 2 months. if it's not so good data on output, then of course we'll ease. I think the risks of higher inflation, which will make us tighten, that those risks, the way we see it now, those risks are small. So I think we're comfortable for now.
And that was Governor Eli Remolona. Catch the third and final part of our three-part series tomorrow on October 1st on how the anomalous flood control projects are impacting the BSP's scenario building. Risk appetites in the Philippine markets are still elusive. Just as a brand new month rolls in this Wednesday, local stocks, the peso, and 10-year yields are all down year to date, and from since the President's State of the Nation address when he called out corrupt practices. As of September 26, the PSEI is down 5.53% compared to the July 28 level and 7.68% year to date. This decline reflects investors' risk-off sentiment caused not only by the U.S. tariff policies, but slowing economic growth and the corruption issues in the Philippines' flood control projects. Japhet Tantiangco, research manager of PhilStocks Financial, says the steeper decline in the latter period is seen to reflect the gravity of the impact of the country's corruption cases. Meanwhile, as of September 26, the peso has depreciated 1.7% compared to the July 28 level and 0.03% year to date. The peso posted 1.64% in gains against the U.S. dollar from end 2024 to July 28, before depreciating from July 28 to September 26. Tantiangco says the peso's weakness could be attributed to the Philippines' balance of payments deficit, as well as investors' loss of confidence amid the country's corruption cases. Let's take a look at the bond market, because as of September 26, the Philippines' 10-year Treasury yield is down compared to July 28th, the level and down year-to-date as well. Tantiangco says the decline in yields means bond prices are rising, in turn reflecting strong investor demand. Investors could be moving towards bonds as a haven amid lingering uncertainties, explains Tantiangco. Taking a look at our markets as they open for trade this week, the PSEI opens the week higher by 0.25%, 6,042. The stock market continued to slide Friday, extending its losing streak to 5 straight sessions. This as investor sentiment remained weak amid uncertainty over corruption allegations tied to flood control projects, according to PhilStocks Financial's Tantiangco. The broader all-shares index likewise fell by nearly 0.25%, with local counters mixed. Let's take a look at the peso. It opens a tad stronger, 58 to the dollar. The local unit closed weaker Friday at 58.10 against the greenback. RCBC chief economist Mike Ricafort attributed this to a generally stronger dollar following hawkish signals from Fed officials despite weak U.S. jobs data. And the 10-year government bond yields have edged higher at 6.026%. As for U.S. markets, have closed Friday higher, ending a 3-day losing streak after mostly in-line inflation data. However, all 3 major indexes still finished the week lower. The Dow rose by over 0.6%, S&P 500 gained by over 0.5%, and the Nasdaq climbed by 0.4%. Meanwhile, the 10-year Treasury yields have edged up to 4.185%. Gold rose to $3,775 per troy ounce. U.S. futures point to slight gains when the markets open later tonight Manila time. Taking a look at the Dow, the Nasdaq, and the S&P, they're all up by about 0.2%. As for the Asian markets, they're opening mixed to the start of this week, with Australia's ASX up by nearly 0.75%, South Korea's Kospi advancing over 1.25%, and Japan's Nikkei 225 down about 0.9%. And before we go, former Brazilian volleyball player, now Senator Leila Barros, says corruption is not just a problem in the Philippines, but one that Brazil continues to struggle with as well. Speaking at a media conference, Barros, now a member of the Federal Senate, stressed the need to hold leaders accountable and ensure stolen funds are returned to the people. She is back in Manila after 21 years, joining the 2025 FIVB Men's World Championship as guest of honor. Paros first captured the hearts of Filipino fans during the 2000 FIVB World Grand Prix. Meantime, Italy has cemented its volleyball dynasty, repeating as FIVB Men's World Champion after defeating Bulgaria in 4 sets at the Mall of Asia Arena. It is Italy's second straight world crown after winning in Poland in 2022 and their 5th overall title. Well, congratulations, Italy. That is it for Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. Catch us again tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. here on One News. We're also streamed live on YouTube and on our Facebook channels. Have a great day ahead.